How's it going, guys? None of you know me, but that's perfectly fine. But I hope that maybe after the end of this series, you might. So I've been recently getting into D&D, as in starting to learn to DM and all that fun stuff. But on that thought, I've also been seeing a bunch of D&D related videos of people animating their adventures and stuff, and I would love to find an animator because I can't draw for shit. But on that spirit, I was hoping to eventually be able to tell you all the tales of my hopefully soon extensive homebrew campaigns, which are going to be absolutely insane because the people that I've managed to, I guess, roll a deception check of a natural 20 to join me, have already told me that they're going to basically make my life miserable as a DM, which, I mean, if I can get used to them, I can get used to any situation, but, here goes nothing, right? Splash. Kidding. Okay, so with that, all of that in mind, I would like to tell you guys a little story, a very simplified story, hopefully, but one that's not too long, about a campaign that I joined that was not an actual D&D campaign, but it used some of the technicalities, like the races, the classes, the items, stuff like that. But this is more of a tale of disaster and shenanigans against, one player in the party in particular, you know, the guy whose first ever D&D experience it was, I didn't want to say anybody, but me. And the DM was kind of I'm not even going to call for this one, he was a dick. But I'll give you a quick background. Basically, a roommate of mine invited me to play D&D with him and his friends because he needed people, they needed people to make the game, interesting. So they decided that they were going to start their own. And they called it Balls and Bayonets. Yeah, my friends are weird. But anyway, again, D&D-ish, but not remotely D&D. Anyway, some of you might get to learn that my preferred character choice is always an elf and always on the roguish side. So basically, he goes around the table and asks each of us to give a quick backstory of our characters, as one would do in a new campaign, and new characters and stuff like that, to give everybody a sense of what kind of person they are and what kind of person their character is, which, makes some pretty good points, which is actually fairly useful if you actually take the time to do it right, and, whatever. So we go around the table, we give our characters backstories, nothing that's not simple, but something that's, a little bit detailed, but not too drawn out, as, half of the party members had to be in class by the next few hours. And this was in mind on a college campus, just a random place anywhere we could find that had an open table big enough to seat all of us. So, we go around the table, everybody gives their backstories, and we get to mine. I have nothing, but I make something up on the spot, and it's decent, basically, but, the group accepts it and moves on just for the sake of getting the game going, which left me a little bit relieved. But boy, was I wrong to stay that way. Throughout the course, he had to get, instead of the everybody is in the same group already, or they meet at a tavern, or, everybody's in the same place, he decides to get us all to the same place through different little mini stories of how we got there. And of course, everybody does good. I can't remember the character names, but I remember we had a barbarian, a ranger, and, if I remember correctly, a mage on top of my, elf and rogue. And all of them just blew through their stuff. Absolutely just flawless design. Managed to get through the thing that they had to do, which would end them up in the tavern or the town that we were all supposed to go to, which is fine. But that's awesome. I'm happy for him, especially my roommate who decided he was going to be a barbarian dwarf. Which, why wouldn't he? Miss that dude, but that's his play style. He's full on double axe, hardy individual. So, he plays the dwarven barbarian who ultimately ends up having to fight over 100 orcs by himself, receiving virtually no damage, maybe one piece of hit point, because somehow he rolled almost perfect natural 20s. Don't know how to explain that. I wanted to accuse of loaded dice, but he was my friend. I'm like, all right, cool. That's awesome. I'm happy for you. So anyway, he moves on and he gets to the town for whatever purpose. God, I wish I could remember the more in-depth details of this campaign so I could tell you all the shenanigans involved in this. And by shenanigans involved, I mean against me. But to continue the story, we get to my turn. And since I am an elf rogue, my story was that I had to sneak into a soldier's encampment in the middle of a clearing in a forest. Now, bear in mind, this clearing is completely surrounded 360 degrees by nothing but forest, except for this one open field in almost a perfect circle. And there are not that many soldiers. It's described to be maybe 9-10 soldiers, on each wing. That's it. That was the description. 9 to 10 soldiers on each of, like a compass was the way it was described to me. 10 soldiers to the north, 10 soldiers to the east, south, west. You get the idea. So I started off in the woods, and I had to find a way to get through the guards to basically get to the center of an encampment, get to the captain's tent, and steal these plans. Now, don't get me wrong, I still was unfamiliar with D&D, so I didn't think to check, to ask, do I see this, or is this around, or which way do the guards face, or anything like that. But one of my friends did help me. So he gave me some quick little advice to help me get through it real quick, whatever. So the 9 to 10 guards, somewhere, one of the two, on each of the faces of a compass that were encircling the map were all that were there. Those were the exact words to me, are all that are present. Yet somehow, whenever I make a move to go into the encampment, there are archers set up all the way around the archery towers set up all the way around the perimeter of the opening. This is supposed to be a small encampment for a temporary stay at night in the middle of nowhere. And yet he proceeds to tell me, after the roughly 40 guards that are involved, there are suddenly a lot more. Which makes absolutely no sense to me because, again, still not knowing much about D&D, I do know that if the DM tells you one thing, like if they flat out tell you, yes, this is what it is, it's not exactly a fair thought for them to be able to shift their thoughts and be like, oh, by the way, there's also this, now that you've, after the fact that you're out in the open, you get spotted by guards. Well, whatever, I try to figure it out. The combat I'm somewhat familiar with, and I do pretty good. He draws his He draws his bow and takes out 2 of the archers that can see him without them having time to ring the alarm. To light the alarm, whatever it was for their alarm system. I cannot even remember. But from that point on, that should have been an immediate red flag to me, but it wasn't. Somehow, my naive, stupid self decided, maybe this'll work. Maybe I can roll with this. but I was wrong. Since I'm getting close to the end of my video time, I'll go ahead and cut this very short. Basically, I managed to make my way there to the captain's tent through the most ungodly gauntlet of everything I've ever seen in my life. Nobody else's story had this much trouble, but anyway, I get there. Somehow, I have about 2 hit points left. And basically, I go into the tent, see the guard captain sleeping. I check around the room. There is nobody else there. He is the only one in his tent. This is his private quarters. So I do think to ask, after being trained a little bit up to that point, to know to ask things. Like, is he awake? And not necessarily is he awake. Is he armored? Is he sleeping in his gear? Does he have a weapon nearby? Any of this. And I roll good perception checks for this. Somehow, I roll pretty good perception checks so I can see the phrase, his armor is on a torso-shaped mannequin across the room from his position on his bed thing. And I thought, okay, well, I could just steal the plans that are sitting on the table right there in the open, rolled up perfect, ready to go. But no. See, I decided I know what's going to happen after the first couple rounds of this. I decide to take my garrote that I have spent all of my gold on. Good garrote. The whole piano wire, chokey, hitman thing, yeah. I stealth my way under the guard's bed, throw the garrote around his neck, and proceed to choke him to death, so that he cannot hear me in any way, shape, or form and scream for the other guards. Because I'd already went through an ungodly level of situation to get here. I had 2 hit points left, and I managed to get there almost undetected. But no, the DM, in his dickish wisdom, had other plans. For some reason, this guard slept with throat armor. I'm not entirely sure if that's a thing. But no, he slept with throat armor. A metal plate worn almost like a necklace that protected him completely against any throat-based attacks. Fine. Why not? I've already been cheated up to this point. Might as well keep the theory going that it's going to keep happening. So anyway, quicker version is I get through that situation, somehow grab the plans and head off. I hit somewhere in the woods to hide after ditching the guards, and I managed to read it with instructions on telling me where I'm supposed to go. Basically through details of a military operation that land me in the tavern where the other party members are also set to end up. Okay, awesome. So of course, I'm on my way, and since I'm last and apparently the farthest away, everybody is at the tavern for a good 2 to 3 days before I manage to arrive. They just hang out, do whatever, and my roommate, the dwarf barbarian, gets drunk and decides to fight with everybody in the tavern. Even the party members. Well, of course the party members receive no damage because why not? But he manages to go off and slay half of the tavern, landing them in jail. I get to the tavern, and somehow some lady tells me the story of why everything's broken, battered, and destroyed, and essentially, it's him. In game, I don't know this until I am told. So basically, the people that I am somehow supposed to end up playing with, I know and understand that I'm supposed to get out of jail somehow. So, with this video getting closer to my length time, I'm going to go ahead and do you guys a solid and cut this into a part 2. But, I'll hopefully have that put out pretty soon. But from there, you're going to love the rest of this. And I do mean that in the most sarcastic of ways. So, come back for for the bullshit of balls and bayonets part 2. Later, guys.